Hey everybody, Clint Esposito here with episode number 13 of the Clint Files. Today I talked to James Currey about mental preparation and mental strength, which basically mental strength comes from mental preparation. So if you don't know, James is from We the People Radio, but he used to be an MMA fighter. So basically we talk about the lessons we learned dealing with adversity in both freestyle motocross and fighting, and how really thinking about stuff before and mentally visualizing it helps you when the time actually comes to, complete the task at hand. This podcast is brought to you by Hero Soap. Please visit herosoap.com and you can actually get 20% off if you use the discount code FREETHINKER. If you don't know, Hero Soap is sourced and made in Arizona. It is owned by an Air Force veteran, and also a percentage of the proceeds goes to first responder charities and veterans charities. And actually, they will match whatever your first order is, however many bars of soap you get. They will match that and send it to deployed troops. So please support Hero Soap. And like I said, you can use our discount code, which is just FREETHINKER when you're going to checkout. Hope you enjoy the episode. We got James Currey with us. What's up, James?
What's going on, Clint? How's it going? Super excited to be here.
Very good, very good. James now runs We the People Radio, but you don't still fight, do you?
I wish. I have 4 herniated discs in my neck, so I cannot fight anymore. If I could, I would still be training. I wouldn't be fighting, but at least training.
Oh, you can't even train.
Can't even train. I'm fat now. I hate it.
That's a bummer.
It's the worst, dude. My life was stripped away from it. But it is what it is. Got to keep on pushing and put that energy into something else.
Right. So that's so basically what we're going to talk about is more so the mental aspects of both freestyle motocross or motocross, just riding, I guess, dirt bikes in general, versus fighting, because both games, I would say, are mostly mental and life or death.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the stakes don't get any higher.
No, you're 100% right. And I think the average fan watching it doesn't realize how much of a mental game both of those sports are. I know watching freestyle motocross, I remember growing up and watching, Mike Metzger hit the first backflip at the X Games, and it was like so wild to me. And I always thought to myself, like, yo, you have to be crazy to do that. And when I first was introduced to you and I was asking you questions and you brought it up, you're like, oh, you step into a cage one-on-one and fight people. It's the same mental game, and you're 100% right. And I think the average person has a hard time understanding that.
And the reason I know as much as I do is because my old roommate in Georgia was a Muay Thai fighter. So we spent a lot of nights sitting there talking about stuff like this, and he'd always be like, "You're crazy," and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "You could get screwed up." I said, "Yeah, but I come home plenty of weekends completely fine, just the way that I left." And I'm like, "You go into a fight and win, and guess what? You got your ass beat to an extent, like most of the time. There's very few times that you step in a ring and the guy's like, you just dominate and don't get touched."
Yeah, it's not even just the fights, it's practice. Like, practice alone. Like, I remember I trained at the #1 gym in New Jersey at the time, AMA Fight Club. Shout out to Mike Constantino. He's a legend. But I was the small fish in the room, and I trained with a lot of guys in the UFC, and I got my ass handed to me on a daily basis. And these guys would, UFC would show up to film for Spike back then, and these guys would turn it on 110%, and they're way better than me. So I'm in practice, just on a regular Wednesday sparring practice. I'm getting my ass kicked on a daily basis. Yeah. And it was brutal.
Yeah, that's actually why I stopped training with those guys, was because the amount of head injuries I've already had. I was like, I don't need to get punched in the face like repeatedly every other day here. It's just unnecessary. What am I doing? I'm like, what am I doing here? I'm just getting beat up. I loved
Well,
it, but I was just getting beat up.
it's a lot of fun. But thankfully, the fight game is kind of evolving, and a lot of coaches and fighters are realizing that putting in that kind of work in the practice room is only shortening your career and not helping you as much as they think it would be. And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about in our last episode about the law of attraction and, mentally training and putting in that visualization rather than actually physically training hard.
And we also had a debate about that being, I'm torn on it as well, because saving yourself for the big moment is always good and you want to go in fresh. But you brought up something also that you do want to test yourself against the best on a regular basis, because if you train with people that are okay and then you get with somebody serious and now all of a sudden the tempo, the intensity is way higher and you're not used to it, it's going to be difficult to adjust.
Oh, without a doubt, but you could still train with the best and still train really hard with those guys and not take that much of a punishment in practice as we used to. Like I know Jamie Varner, who I trained with for many years. His career ended short because of the sparring sessions.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he had to stop. He ended his career because I remember him training with this guy Adlan Amagov, this Russian dude who came in with Habib from UFC.
Nurmagomedov or something.
His name, exactly. They used to come to our gym and train all the time. And Jamie and this guy, Adlan Amagov, would go into straight wars. Like, it was like stuff of legend. Like, we'd all stop just to watch these guys spar because they were just
practice.
And it was unbelievable to watch. But he even says, he's like, I wish I didn't do that because my career would have been so much longer. He was a WEC champ at 155. He was a great, great fighter.
That's and we're kind of, I mean, I guess it's still mental stuff, but your head can only take so many poundings, and I've learned it on my own, and I've seen other people too. And I had a friend that had a bunch of really bad head injuries, and he kept saying, "There's no proof that they compound." And I'm like, I've watched you develop over the last 15 years, and I can tell you that concussions fucking compound. I can tell you from myself that it becomes easier to get knocked out the more times you go out. Like, your body kind of gets used to, like, shutting off.
There's enough evidence now. Like, look at guys like Chuck Liddell. Like, early in his career, his chin was so strong, and he prided himself on being able to take punishment. And then later on in his career, like, he was getting slept left and right because he couldn't take those punches anymore. And if you look back at his old fights, he was getting wailed on, and he just eat it and walk right through it, and now he just crumbles. And it's really unfortunate to see guys like that you looked up to, but it's not just in fighting. And I'm sure it's in freestyle motocross. You guys take some of the gnarliest spills I have ever seen in my life. And some guys walk away from it, some can't.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the difficult part of both of these, and that's why we were talking about this in general, just the how strong you have to be, knowing that is an option, like riding. You suit up, especially if the conditions are a little bit gnarly. See, I was a demo guy. I wasn't a contest guy. So contests, I would imagine, are the same thing I'm dealing with setups being small, and when they jammed us in the corner of a fucking festival or something, or teeny buildings or whatever. And then contests is like, you better throw all your biggest shit every time you get on your bike. So the dangers are different. But in any event, when you're getting suited up, the same thing with fighting, you're taking the realization that I could get fucked up in this.
Put to sleep, yeah. With fighting, it was very different as far, well, I may not from motocross, but very different from anything else that I've really done. I wrestled since I was 4 years old. I had a very big wrestling background. But you lose in a wrestling match, it's not like losing in a fight. Like, you're in front of a bunch of people. Like, I remember growing up as a kid and getting into fights, and you never wanted to be the kid that got put to sleep. Like, you always got made fun of, like, regardless of the skill level. Like, you just never wanted to be that kid. And now you're fighting in front of thousands of people, and you get knocked out in front of everybody. You're like, man, this sucks. So if you don't have the mental game right, you won't be able to get in there. You're going to get knocked out every time.
Well, this is what you just said is actually something I use all the time for comedy, because people are always like, aren't you afraid to get in front of all those people? And I'm like, they're just going to hurt my ego, like, if they don't laugh at me. But, like, if I crash my dick off in front of 3,000 people, guess what? My ego hurts and I can't walk for the next, like, month. So it's not even the same thing.
It's not even close. It's not. And when I say to people all the time, I learned more about life in wrestling and MMA than I did in any schooling that I got. And discipline and hard work and preparation.
Real world knowledge.
Yes, real life, 100%. And I think with the fighting and the wrestling and that mental aspect of these sports, and I don't know about you, I'm sure it's very similar. You carry that over into everything that you do, in every aspect. Like with this business that we're doing with We the People, I take that same mentality. I go on interviews right now. I'll tell you right now, I still get nervous. I do shows. We do shows 3 shows a week, and before every show, my palms are sweating. I get a little nervous, but because I'm mentally prepared for these things, I know I can handle it. I'm ready to go. And if I didn't have that experience, like people get so scared with public speaking, like you just said, doing your comedy. And if I've done public speaking, if I didn't have that wrestling background, that fighting background, that mental game covered, I would never be able to get over that hump.
And I think people don't see why they correlate if they didn't do something like that, but it's what we were just saying. All the adversity and everything that you dealt with in that, and you learned a lot about yourself, like when times get hard, how you react and how you should react. And another thing is to be calm when shit's breaking down around you, which a lot of people freak out. And let me tell you, freaking out has never fucking helped anybody in any situation. It's never been a positive.
I always use the analogy when shit hits the fan of drowning. You're in the ocean and, you feel like you can't swim anymore. You naturally just want to freak out and try to, figure out how to swim again and get afloat. But that's literally the worst thing that you can do. You're only going to tire yourself out and you're going to end up sinking rather than thinking calmly and laying on your back and just letting the water take you where you go.
And you're expending extra energy freaking out.
Exactly. And it's the same thing. You can carry it on to any aspect of your life, business, personal, entertainment, anything that you're doing, you can carry that mentality with you. And this is why I say everybody, it's not everybody's a millionaire, not everybody's a fighter, not everybody's a freestyle motocross rider. Not everybody could do it. And I always tell people fighting is 80% mental, at least 80% mental, if not more. It's just the mental aspect of being able to step in the cage and fight somebody one-on-one, getting over that fear of being able to do that. That's a battle that you have to have inside your own head. And I can only imagine pulling up to a ramp and about to send it on a ramp. You have to have that mental battle well before you're pulling up to that ramp. And people don't understand that. They just get up to there and they're like, I guess I'm going to figure it out. And they haven't had that mental battle. And before they take off, they're dead in the water. They're crashing.
Yeah, because of yeah, I agree. A lot of people come up with ideas and they say, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. And then when the rubber meets the road and you actually have to start, people would always talk about foam pits. Take me to a foam pit. I said, listen, motherfucker, you're going to jump in there once or twice and be like, this sucks dick in this foam pit. And then you're really going to decide how badly you want to do that shit. Because It's not landing in a cloud, in which people think. It's like best for worst case scenario. Worst case scenario is I'm going to probably land on my fucking head and get drilled into the ground with my dirt bike on top of me. What's best case? There's some foam under me, but it's not really that comfortable. But you did bring up something that was good, that about people freaking out and stuff. And how much did you learn in fighting when you first started fight, or wrestling even, when you first get caught, right? You first find yourself in trouble, and all of a sudden you initially have that panic, and then you learn to shut that off and go, okay, we're in this situation now. We're going to just focus and deal with the job at hand right now to get through this. Pastrana had a good quote, and I say it's basically exactly what I'm describing. In all of the chaos, there is a calm that only very few people reach. And I'm paraphrasing it because I don't remember it exactly. But it's like you said, a lot of people are good in practice, and then the moment comes and they freak out and they don't. You have to, when everything's going to shit, you have to be able to pull inside yourself and calm down and focus on the task that really matters at the moment.
Without a doubt, and that goes straight with mental preparation. Like before any fight, and I didn't learn this until later in life. Like I wish I knew this when I was wrestling in high school, because I was good. I was just more interested in partying and banging girls in high school than I was in focusing on wrestling. I did really well, and I won a lot of tournaments, and I could have just been much better if I knew this mental aspect of the game. I think it really would have helped me, because in my fighting I learned this, and it was all mental preparation. But you go into a cage and the door closes, the crowd's cheering, going nuts. It's you versus him. There's nothing else, and you take a couple punches in the face, and all of a sudden you're on your back and he's ground and pounding you. If you're freaking out, fight's over. You're gonna get the fight's over. And I always prided myself that when I was in a fight, it felt like it was slow motion. Everything felt slow. Everything and I could hear. Oh, I couldn't even hear the crowd. I could just hear my coach, and I couldn't hear anything else. And that was all I was focused on, was the task at hand, and that was because of the preparation that I put in prior to the fight. Like I would literally sit there in my room and just put music on and just visualize for hours the fight, exactly every single round, getting my hand raised. And because I put in that time, I was able to focus. Like when the worst possible opportunity was happening, I'm getting my ass kicked, I wasn't focused on getting my ass kicked. I was focusing on what I could do to get out of getting my ass kicked. And most people can't do that. Most people get in that situation and they just freak out even more. And it all comes down to mental preparation. And tell me if I'm wrong, in freestyle motocross, hitting that ramp is not pulling up to that ramp and sending it. It's all the mental preparation that you do in the days and months or the years that you've put in leading up to that.
Yeah, everything's. So I was terrified to flip, absolutely terrified. But I didn't want to go my whole career and never flip. So I actually flipped for like 10 or 12 years or something. But in the beginning, trying to learn it, I was so scared, and I just learned that the only way to beat that fear was to over prepare, or just prepare. If you constantly are doing something towards it, thinking about it, same thing, tons of visualization. I'd get there, I'd see the ramp. Once I saw the setup, I'd visualize turning the corner, pulling, what everything would be like. And another thing my friend taught me is that I used to try to get myself mad to do things. Be like, fuck this, I'm flipping. And that never worked. And my friend says, you're still using a negative emotion. Yes. He goes, you have to use a positive emotion. So you have to get that warm feeling inside your stomach. You need to visualize flipping that and being successful so well that at the end you feel. I'm getting goosebumps right now feeling landing a flip. Like I can put myself there and put myself in a positive state where in my, like I feel like I just pulled one and I'm like, yeah. And that's how you have to just be like, this is going to be so sick when it happens. This crowd's going to freak the fuck out. I'm about to fucking ride away perfect, and just get yourself amped up in a positive way.
It goes back to that old study where they had the basketball players shooting the free throws, associated your brain with making those shots. So when you actually physically did it, it almost like came naturally to you. And if you have that negative emotion attached to it, you're never going to want to do it. Like you never go out and seek a negative emotion. It's not like you go out in the day and you're like, man, what can I do to be pissed off today? Yeah. Like you always do what you want to do to make yourself happy. So if you can associate whatever you're doing to being happy, and I associated it, like sports like motocross, sports like fighting, surfing, skydiving, it's a very tough conversation to have with people unless you've actually done it. And this is why I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today, because you can understand the conversation on a different level than the average person who hasn't done these things. And if you haven't had your hand raised or ridden a wave or jumped out of an airplane or launched yourself off of a ramp, and you haven't experienced that feeling before, there's no way you can explain it to somebody. There's no way you can put it in a reference where it's like a good feeling, because all they're thinking is like, yo, that's crazy. You're fucking nuts.
Yeah.
They don't associate it with a happy, fun, exciting feeling, you know.
And that's another thing that people, and it goes back to what you were saying, preparation. But people are always like, man, jumping that ramp is crazy. But it's like, or fighting somebody is crazy. But it's like, you have trained to get to that point. In the beginning, yeah, the first day you signed up, the first day I got on a motorcycle, jumping that ramp was crazy. You getting into a fight the first day you showed up at practice with a professional MMA fighter would have been fucking stupid. And listen, me trying to jump a ramp at 11 or whatever, 1 year into riding would have been fucking stupid too. But after years and years and years and years and years, and you've made all those little things become muscle memory. You've learned and you focused so much that all these little moves become easy, and eventually you can stack things on top of each other. You know, it's like tricks. Like originally doing a seat grab was super weird, and then eventually I was doing seat grab Indian airs, and then I'm like, yo, seat grab Indian air is easy. I can take my hand off at the same time. But it's like you don't go right to the third step. You learn everything in increments. And
absolutely.
For people to sit that have never done any of this stuff and then look at it, they just see it as crazy because they can't relate to it at all.
No, not whatsoever. And I'll never forget my first ever fight. So when I started training, I was like 21 years old, and I went to this gym, and it wasn't any big time players, it was just a bunch of guys that wanted to learn how to fight. And I very quickly became the best guy in the room. Very quickly, because I had the wrestling background. I had no striking experience, but because of my wrestling background, I was able to very quickly become the best guy in the room. And I fought for them 3 times underneath that gym. And my first fight, I remember going in and I weighed in at 155. The week before the fight, I was supposed to be at 145. The week before the fight, the guy bailed. The day of the fight, I had a second guy at 155. He bailed. And the promoter goes to me, he goes, hey, I know you sold a bunch of tickets, but your guy's got no fight. I got a guy at 180 if you want to take it. And in my head, I'm like, yeah. In my head, I'm just like, you know what? I put in all this time. I cut the weight. I did what I had to do. I just want to fight, and I knew I was ready, and I took the fight. And I remember walking out to the cage, and I still had those nervous emotions.
So what do you weigh, 145 right now, going into this fight?
Oh, no, I weighed in at 153.
Okay.
I weighed in at 153. Because a week before,
I cut down
I always cut my last 10 pounds like the couple days before weighing. It's all water weight.
Yeah. That's what I did for wrestling. I'd get myself like 6 pounds over and just hover there the whole season. And then day of, seriously, like half an hour, 40 minutes with a sweatsuit, and I'd be down.
Absolutely. You get it down to a science when you do it so many years. It's not healthy. I don't recommend anybody doing it. There's now a lot of big issues, like you had Max Holloway have a stroke and things like that. Well,
they're going too much, man. The cut you should only be allowed a certain amount, like, because come down like 3.
Well, I walked around when I was fighting at 145. I walked around at 170.
Wow.
Yeah, and 170, 175, and I cut down to 145, which wasn't that bad because you had time. Like, it's not like wrestling where you had to keep it off for a 6-month time frame. You had 2-3 months before the fight to start bringing it down. Yeah, so you could you slowly, and when you work as hard and you start really dieting, it comes off pretty easily. But it's still, you're losing that much weight. It's really not that good for you.
Right.
But I remember walking into my first fight, and I was so nervous, don't get me wrong, and because the guy was so much bigger. I got out to the cage. I walked out first, and he comes out, and he weighed in with a hoodie, this guy. So I didn't really get to see him, like, what he looked like. He was shredded, like, yoked out of his mind. I'm looking across the cage. I'm like, man, I don't know if this is a good idea, because he was just so much bigger than me.
Yeah.
And I beat the hell out of him. Because I beat the hell out of him. I destroyed him. And it was because I put so much time. I just wrestled the hell out of him, ground and pound him. And I just put so much time in, and I did what I knew I could do, and I was comfortable doing. And I just went back to my instincts and what I was comfortable doing. And it came so easy. And I beat 3 rounds, just pounded on this kid's face. And his coaches came up to me like, man, we got to teach this kid how to wrestle because you whooped his ass. Yeah. And he was 10 pounds heavier than my walk-around weight.
Yeah.
You know, so he's probably walking around at 200 pounds, and I beat the hell out of him, and it was all because I mentally prepared for this moment, and I the whole entire fight, I just visualized myself winning. There was no chance, never in my head did I once think I was going to lose this fight.
You also played into your strengths, though, which a lot of people get into. And again, it's preparation, but because you stayed on your game plan. And a lot of people go in with some kind of plan, and then they just kind of like forget.
Mike Tyson's famous quote is, "You can have a game plan. Everybody has a game plan until they get punched in the face."
Exactly.
It's really true. People like, I talk about this with the police officers all the time, because it's really unfortunate what goes on with police officers, because I think it just comes down to the lack of training and lack of preparation with a lot of these situations. A lot of these cops have never been punched in the face before. And, you know, they have some lunatic guy who's going nuts, punches him once, tries to grab his gun. Your adrenaline is going. Yeah. And if you've never had that adrenaline pumping at that high of a level, you don't know how to handle it. You don't know how to react. You're mentally, you can't even think. Like, your mind doesn't work the same. And if you've never been in that situation, you're acting strictly on emotion rather than rational thought. And that's the problem with mental preparation. That's the whole why the importance of mental preparation comes into play, because if you don't have that mental preparation, you're strictly acting on emotion. It doesn't matter what your coach is saying to you in your corner. It doesn't matter what you do before you come up to this ramp. If you're not mentally prepared or mentally ready to handle the situation, you're running on pure emotion and adrenaline. Yep. And that's not a good thing, not a good place to be. And that's what it comes down to. You have to be mentally prepared. So when I was at this gym, like I said, I became quickly the best guy in the room. And I fought for them 3 times. And I realized that if I stayed in this room, I was never going to get better. I was never going to grow and become a better fighter. And I loved the guys that I worked with. It was a lot of fun, but I was going to hurt somebody. I was knocking people out in practice. So I met Nick Mirabella, who's our co-host on We the People Radio, and he brought me over to AMA Fight Club. And I'll never forget my first day at AMA Fight Club. I go in there. It was a Sunday practice with pros, a bunch of UFC guys, Jim Miller, Jamie Varner, Dan Miller, Charlie Brenneman. All these guys are killers in the cage. And this is like in the heyday when Jim was a top 3 fighter. I walked into the room and I get paired up with Jim because he's the same size as me. And I'm like, fuck, like he's going to kill me. Like this guy is one of the best guys in the world. Right. And I'm just some guy off the street. But because I was mentally prepared, I was able to hang with these guys. Granted, I got my ass kicked, but it didn't demoralize me. It didn't like, you know, most people go in there and they get their ass kicked. They're like, nah, fuck this. I'm done. And it's like, no, that's how you get better. You got to mentally toughen up to get to this point of mental clarity. When you step into the limelight, when the spotlight's on you, you can handle it.
Well, that's knowing that you did the work and you're not freaking out that you're unprepared.
Yeah, but then after that, it was a cakewalk. Every fight, I said it on our last show, every fight after that, man. After I went into that room and I was in this room with these killers and they were literally kicking my ass on a daily basis. Like I'd walk home, I'd go home and sore. I'd be hurt, black eyes, just from practice. And I'd go into a cage and fight somebody and I'd say to them, I'd like, there's no way anybody that they're going to put in front of me in this fight is better than the guys that I'm training with on a daily basis. There's no way. So even though I was getting my ass kicked every single day, I was able to use that.
But you're getting your ass kicked by the absolute best.
Yes.
Which is expected.
But people don't have a hard time with that. Like, think about it. Anytime you start something new. Like, for example, right now, with these shows, I'm learning as I go. I'm figuring things out with editing and things like that. I have no idea what I'm doing. And sometimes it's very frustrating because I don't like to not be good at things. Like, you know, a lot of people have a hard time not being good at things, and they won't even attempt things because they don't want to look stupid or they don't want to, you know, they have that. And that's the mental game. That's the mental aspect of anything that they do. Public speaking, whatever it may be, they don't want their ego to take a hit. And it's very difficult for many, you know, I would say the majority of people. You know, I would say we're the few that have that mentality.
But that may be back to what you were saying earlier with a lot of people haven't been hit in the face or haven't gotten into the shit. So they haven't had to deal with that.
But I don't think it has to do with getting hit in the face. I think it has to do with just really...
I'm just using that for a metaphor, like having something really shitty in life, you know, or like a dire emergency at that moment where you're just like, have to calm down and deal with the situation instead of freaking out.
Yeah, and when you freak out, it gets you into so much more trouble. Like, it usually makes the situation worse. Like, there's so many life situations where you need to make split-second decisions, and whether you're a parent and you have a child. I think there's so many situations, and if you aren't prepared mentally to handle those things, usually you're going to make the situation worse. And the mental game of life is so important, and people, I think, just dismiss it because they don't think it's as important, like, because they take it for granted almost. It's like, your eyesight, or even like you get a cut on your finger. You don't realize how much you use your finger till it's like cut and you can't use it. And then when it's cut, you're like, son of a bitch, like, this sucks. Yeah. And you don't realize it. And I think it's the same thing with mental game. People they take it for granted.
We're not taught it. When is that ever brought up to you ever in school? All that stuff has been made, like foo-foo, or, like some kind of like woo-woo stuff, like, you know what I mean? Oh, you're going to meditate. When that stuff actually fucking works, but it's made to, it's like vilified where they're just like,
you're some evil Satanist because you meditate.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really wild. For me, I had to really shift, because when I would get anxious or have issues in my life that you come into crossroads, I would always go to my comfortable zone and I'd go and train, because that was a way for me to let some steam off.
Yep.
And once I wasn't able to do that, it was a learning curve for me. I had to literally sit down and dig deep and find that mental zone where I could live my life and still be happy and not be miserable.
How do you spend that without physical stuff? I'm curious, because I don't know if I'd be able to do it.
No, it's very difficult. I'm still, to this day, I'm battling with it. But I started doing, We the People. I started doing things that I could do physically that wouldn't, not even physically, but things that would challenge me. It was the challenge that I was really looking for. It was the obstacle, and I really liked, because fighting was always a chess match to me. It was always a mental game more than a physical, because the physical always came easy to me, because I did it my entire life. It was something that I did forever. And there's some people, like you said, that are extremely physically gifted at certain things, and mentally they can't do it. So
I think preparation has a lot of that, but I think that you're selling yourself short on that one. And I think that you're a lot more stronger mentally than, I think, from talking to you, I think you're a mentally strong person, and a lot of it is preparation. But I've watched kids practice all week and be all right, and then get to shows and then buckle. So I mean, I think that there's still people that are good under pressure and people that are not, for whatever reason.
You're 100% right. No, I would agree with you that I'm very mentally strong, but I think that came over years and years and years of working at it, and literally training myself to think a certain way. Like, we had a conversation about the law of attraction the other day, and I think that's one of the most easier said things than done in the entire world. Like, it's easier to say, like, why don't you just think positive thoughts instead of negative thoughts? Like, yeah. Okay, cool. Like, that's in theory that sounds great, but when life hits you like a fucking Mack truck, like, you lose somebody in your family, whatever it may be, there's so many things that happen in life that throw you curveballs. It's easier said than done. Like, it's not like you can't just like, okay, yeah, I'm positive, everything's good. Yeah. And you have to mentally train to be able to turn that switch when something bad happens and you're thinking negatively. You have to almost catch it yourself. You have to be like, all right, I need to refocus my thoughts and sit there and focus on something different. And people don't know how to do that, and they just spiral because you ever wake up in the morning and you just feel like shit and you stub your toe and the day just spirals out of there, and like and you just have like a week, like it's just miserable. Or the same thing though, you wake up in the morning and your body feels great. You're like, oh, today's going to be a great day, and like the universe just gives you everything you want. Like, all this stuff is all happening at the same time.
Dude, races. You'll struggle your dick off and get like a fifth. Same dudes, following week, whole shot, gone, never see anybody, win by like 10 seconds. You can't make a mistake. And the days that I've won, most of them were like that. Not like there was a ton of them, but the days that I won, I just like, I don't know what the fuck's going on today, but I'll take it.
Well, yeah, and you have the fighters. They're like, oh, I was lucky that day, or God was with me. They have all these things that they say when they accomplish these things, and I think that's almost a cop out, in my opinion, because you put so much time in. And
I was gonna write that the other day. I said all these people fucking giving the credit away to God after they did all this fucking work. You're like, you struggle your ass off to train, and then you're like, thank you God, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't think he was there.
Nuts. It drives me nuts because me being an entrepreneur and someone who's striving for success in life, and I use that same mentality that I put in fighting into building a business. So many people that are very successful aren't successful by accident, and us common folk who aren't successful, who are living paycheck to paycheck, they look at these people that are unbelievably wealthy and successful, like, oh, they were just in the right place at the right time, or they just got lucky. And that's it aggravates me to no end. It's my friends, it's my family. They all say it. And I say, what do you mean? What do you mean they were lucky? You didn't see the work that they put in, the hours, the amount of time that they put in, the sacrifice, the family parties that they missed, the events that they missed to build this. Like, they earned every single second of this because of the time and the mental preparation it took to get there. Because building a business is the same thing. It's not like a straight shot. Like, people think success is just straight up. Yeah. It's a fucking roller coaster ride, man. And if you aren't mentally prepared to handle those lows, if you aren't ready for that, you're quitting. You're done. You're not going to follow through. It's over before it even starts. And so many people do that. Like, how many friends do you have wanted to start a business or start something, and immediately the first obstacle hits, they bail. They're like, this isn't working.
Oh, yeah. I had a friend that started a landscape business. He had it for 6 months, and then I was like, yo, how's it going? He goes, oh, I got rid of it. Nobody got their lawns cut. I said, nobody even knew you had a fucking business yet. Like 6 months? Like, what did the 12 people know that you had a business you were trying to pitch? Like, you got to stay with it.
Absolutely. Honestly, we're blessed in our situation, at least for us, and I know you guys are blowing up as well, that we blew up way faster than we expected. Like, mentally, before going into this show, me and Nick were talking, I was ready to put in like a year or two of grinding, of putting out content and not getting any traction whatsoever, kind of just talking to ourselves. Like, that was what I was mentally preparing to do, because you have to do that.
That's what I told Mike.
Yeah.
I said, expect this to be a long process. Don't expect 2 months in we're going to be like fucking
blowing up. Absolutely. And it's not expected at all. And you have to mentally prepare for that. And you have to set expectations. And if it happens that you blow up quicker than you expected, cool. That's all. But at the same time, even when you do blow up quicker than expected, it doesn't mean that there's not going to be struggles or lows inside the business. Like, it's still a roller coaster ride. Like,
well, and sometimes I think people get, and I'm notorious for it, wanting everything now. But sometimes you're not ready for the opportunity yet. And if you were to get it now, you would blow it because you're not in the position, So, I mean, I think things do come through in the time that they're supposed to when you've prepared enough. And I say it all the time, like riding. If I had not ridden pro, there's no way I would have, even been offered the position to start jumping ramps and stuff. And I used to do my practice, and then I would do tricks after. And I rode at a guy's house that was like a big dude around here. So somebody asked him to do the freestyle shows. And he goes, I can't do it because I have a business and a kid, but there's a pro rider that rides here that already does some tricks. So did I know? I rode because I loved it, and I was doing tricks because I used to do tricks on my BMX bike when I was a kid. And then freestyle came along, and then I happened to be in the position to take advantage of the opportunity of riding the monster jams. But had I not been doing that stuff because I really loved to do it and I wanted to be the best rider I could be, I wouldn't have been in the position. I tell people all the time, you need to first do something because you love it, and that's when you're going to be super focused on it, like you said. 2, like you said, stick with it. If you don't really love what you're doing, if you're trying to do a business because you think you're going to make a lot of money or get pussy or whatever it is, you got another thing coming because it doesn't work that way. 3, if you really like it, you're going to spend the time to get better and do the best job you can. And if you're just doing it to make money, you're not going to put as much effort in.
No, you're absolutely right. And the first sign of any struggle, you're going to bail. It happens with, and it's not even like some people get into things and they think that they like it and they enjoy it as a hobby, and then they do it for a business. They realize that they didn't really like it, and it's first sign of struggle. They bail, and it's so unfortunate.
But I think that all this still circles back to the initial thing we were saying, where people that do sports and excel and learn how to play under pressure ultimately are able to handle stuff like that in the future. Like, I think that I didn't realize they were like sports teach you things as a kid, and I just always loved sports, so I was like, yeah, I'm like learning or whatever, but really I just wanted to fucking play stuff. But now I do realize the amount of just life lessons and the never give up attitude and all that stuff that I developed from all these sports that I did are really my main asset in life.
And listen, you eat shit enough and you still get back up and keep riding the bike, you have to love it. You cannot, like same for me, like not even getting punched in the face. Like, forget about all of that. Just cutting the damn weight. Like, that's the most miserable thing in the world. Like, I remember being in high school for wrestling, and I'd have to cut weight, and I wasn't on weight. I would go and I would stand on the scale with my water and my turkey sandwich on wheat bread with no condiments on it whatsoever.
To see if it was going to be too much?
And if I was because I had it down to a science, if I was a pound over after lunch, I could lose that pound just walking around the school throughout the day. It would just come off, and I'd be good. So I would stand there, and if I was over a pound on the scale with the things in my hand, I'd start pouring some of the water out, ripping pieces of the sandwich out. Some days I couldn't eat. Some days I got a bite. Some days I got to eat the whole sandwich.
Did you ever dip and just spit? I had a friend that would just not eat all day, and he'd put a dip in, he'd just spit the whole time to get rid of that.
I didn't dip, but what I did is I took sugar-free Starburst, and I would
when your mouth water,
and I just spit in a water bottle, and people always like it would be gross. It'd be like neon-colored spit in a water bottle in the class, and the teacher would make me sit in the back so nobody had to look at it.
Yeah.
But that mental game of not like sitting there and watching all of your friends eat at lunchtime, going to lunch, getting Friday pizza, having a good time, eating whatever you want, and when you're cutting weight, your cravings, your senses it's all heightened. So you smell it and you're just like, man, I really want that. And to have that mental discipline to say no.
Well, that's what we were just talking about with your business that you just started, and you hit some adversity and then you bail, because guess what? You always got to put a bagel in your fucking mouth every day, and you never had to, you sat there and did that because and you said it too about even your podcast, that prior to podcasting still and everything, you get nervous. And you get nervous because of because of the pressure you've put on yourself to do a good job. You don't want to go in and be the failure and be the shit part of the show. And that's what bothers you. And I tell people all the time, getting nervous is good. That means you give a fuck.
Yes. No, but it also goes and the reason why I get nervous is because I know I prepared so much. I know I put in the time.
And now's the time. I got to pull it right now.
And now I have to deliver.
Yep.
Now, exactly. And that's what gets me nervous, is because I've prepped and I've visualized it in my head 100,000 times, and now here's the moment. And if you don't deliver, you're hard on yourself. But when you do it over and over and over again, it's almost becomes second nature, and like you're just like, all right, here's the nerves, like here's the butterflies, and you just expect it and just push through it, and you crush it every time. And I think, honestly, I don't know about you, that nerves almost makes me perform better.
Oh, I'm 110% better game time than I am practice. I'm not the guy that's good practice and then sucks in the game. I'm the opposite.
Yes.
In practice, you're like, man, he's all right. And then game time comes and I like find an extra gear.
I could never explain it to anybody. Because you're right. Practice, I'd get my ass kicked. Wrestling, I dogged it in practice. But when it was game time, I was able to just hit a switch. And you could tell mentally you were different. Like, I can't like I physically couldn't just turn it on right now. Like I'd have to like really get my mind focused to get that switch. Like I couldn't just turn it on. Like I have to sit there and really get into the zone. And I remember being, putting my headphones in and before a fight, and I wouldn't listen to I didn't want to hear my coaches talk. I didn't want to hear anybody around me. I just wanted to focus on what I was doing and get in that zone, and so I could turn that switch on. If I were just like, I see some people fight like Ariel Adesanya, and he comes out and he's dancing. I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
I couldn't do that before a fight.
But maybe that's his way of.
Yes, everybody's different.
Yeah.
100%.
I used to make jokes. I'd fuck around with people. They'd get mad.
Oh, I would hate. I'd hate you. You do that. I could not do that.
Yeah.
I remember fighters like in the fight game. The guys that you're fighting. People would want to talk to you at weigh-ins. I'd be like, bro, get the fuck away from me. I want to kill you right now. Like, don't talk to me. I'm ready to rip your head off because that's all I've been visualizing for 3 months is literally killing you and coming away with my hand raised because that's all I cared about was winning. Like I didn't care. Like the feeling of getting your hand raised, or the feeling, I'm sure, after you stick a fucking gnarly trick off a ramp is unexplainable to anybody unless you've done it. Like you can, and it's not even just the aspect of fighting. It's all of the work and the preparation that you put in coming to fruition is the coolest. I have chills thinking about it right now because it's just the coolest feeling in the world. And it goes back to freestyle. It goes back to surfing, skydiving. Like, if you try to explain like skydiving to somebody, if they've never done it, they don't know what that feeling is like. They just think you're hucking yourself out of an airplane and free falling. They don't realize that there's such a feeling to that free fall. And unless you've done these things, you don't know that feeling. This is why I did it, because that feeling was the only way you can get it was by doing things like that. I'm an adrenaline junkie. But now that I'm older, it's coming up more and more when I accomplish things in my business life, in my personal life. Those things that feeling is still there. A little different, don't get me wrong, because I'm not getting punched in the face, but I still get that satisfactory feeling from putting in that work, putting that time and that preparation to get the result that I wanted.
Absolutely. And that's what we're just tying just basically comparing the mental state of fighters and like freestylers, people that do shit like that. But really, like we're saying, the mental state does carry over. And if you can either learn, I don't know how else you would learn it without having done something like that. I'm sure that there are things that probably feel that way that we don't know about because we didn't do them, maybe. But maybe getting an A on a test, I don't know. I never did that, so maybe that feels good.
I did not get any A's on tests.
Me neither. I was not the best student.
No, absolutely not. But I think that's kind of plays into why we took the paths that we took, because we always kind of walked to the beat of our own drum.
I think people were either meant to be home knitting or whatever, or out being warriors and killing bison. And I think you and I are the latter. And in the old world, we'd have been warriors or hunters or
and badass motherfuckers,
just doing shit like that all the day. And now, fortunately or unfortunately, that stuff's kind of gone away to an extent. And now they're trying to make everybody good with sitting at a desk for fucking hours, which is why we have Adderall. Like, I think Adderall is basically trying to take people like you and me and stick us at a cubicle for 8 hours a day and get us to be good little worker bees. And I'm like, listen, I don't think we have an issue. I think we're doing, that's not what we're supposed to be doing.
Well, they're giving these kids Adderall like fucking candy, man. Like, I'm so thankful. Because I always thought I had ADD. I still think I do. I have really bad attention.
Well, because you're a energetic 11-year-old boy? Like, that's the ridiculous.
Yeah, you want this little kid to sit in a desk for 6 to 8 hours a day and pay attention. Good luck. This little boy wants to go out and run in the mud, play sports, do boy things, and be a regular child. And now when you're a regular child, you're a nuisance. You're a problem. Yeah. So we have to sedate this kid.
Exactly.
And I think that it does such a disservice to our children, and it's a problem, in my opinion.
You know, they like to accept everybody. Everybody's accepted, except if you're not a fucking bookworm. You know what I mean? Like, I think a lot of these kids, like I'm saying, are just supposed to do shit with their hands. They're supposed to be outside. They're like, I could never do a desk job where I sit there for 8 hours, 5 days a week, dude, I would lose it. Even being a mechanic, I was doing that full time, and just tinkering with shit all day long, man, was driving me fucking insane. And it was just another broken thing, and I'm like, dude, I can't do it.
Nah, man, it's too much. Like I need to let my wings fly. I need to, do things and go out and live life. And a lot of people are scared of risk, and that comes back to the mental game, because everything that we did was a risk. Every time you stepped in the cage, every time you pulled up through a ramp, it was a huge risk every single time.
But those were risks. I mean, I think this is what the people take the risk of driving to work or flying or whatever, but they don't want to take these risks that we took because it doesn't mean anything to them. And the end goal, the riding and the fighting, were very important to us. So I would have done anything to ride and deal with whatever, which I did. And I think that's probably maybe people don't love anything in their life. They didn't find the thing that they love the way that we love those things, to really put their neck on the line and learn those lessons.
Yeah, I think everybody learns different lessons. It depends on what you're passionate about and what you want to do, because everybody is very different. Like they're very, very, even though if you look at it from 50,000 feet, we have so many similarities. A lot of people get stuck in herd mentality, groupthink. I can't stand it. But at the end of the day, everybody's got their own passions and their own loves for things. And if your love is knitting,
yeah,
go get it. Like, go after it. Like, go do it.
Be the best fucking knitter you can be.
Yes. But people don't want to take risks, even if they love fucking knitting. Like, when I realized that I'm different than a lot of people was when I got my first big-time sales job. Because that's what I did for a living, with sales. And it was commission only. There was no salary. It was sell or go home. You don't sell, you don't make money. And I was making more money than all of my friends, every single one of them that went to college. Nick was the only one that was doing as good as I am, just crushing at his salon. But I was crushing, and I could have got any one of my friends a job. I was like, hey, here's my paychecks, here's what I'm doing. Come take an interview, I'll get you a job. And they would all say, hey, is there a salary? Am I guaranteed money? And I'd say, no, you just got to sell. And every single person say, nah, I need something more set in stone. I'm like, bro, I am making money hand over fist, and you don't want to do this? Like, I'm giving you an opportunity, because they didn't want to take the risk.
It's like staying with your abusive boyfriend because at least you already know what that abuse is, and it may be worse next time or something. You know what I mean? Like, that's 100% what it is. And people, even like with comedy, I say it all the time. A lot of these kids that have good full-time jobs, unfortunately, won't make it because it's not dire. You need to put yourself into the position of, this has to work or I'm fucked.
So someone told me once that if you have a plan B, the plan A is failed. The plan A is already failed. And I 100% believe that, because if you have a plan B, that means you're already thinking about this, whatever plan A is failing. Yep. You already put that out there. And you can't have that mentality.
You've given yourself an out.
Yes, exactly. And that's the same thing with with motocross or with fighting. If you go in there with any doubt whatsoever, you lost the fight before it even started. And people would always ask me, James, aren't you afraid that you're going to lose the fight? They would always ask me that. And I never understood that question. I never got it, because it didn't make sense to me, because in my head, I never lost the fight. It was not in the cards. There was no chance I was losing this fight. And so when people ask me, I'd be like, bro, well, why are you even asking me this question? Like, get out of here with that nonsense, because there's no chance. Like, that doesn't even cross my mind. But so many people, they have that mentality where they think, they think about the worst before they can think about the best. They think about what's the worst thing that's going to happen, rather than the things that actually could happen. Like, like my favorite is like, back to business. What if this business fails? Okay, well, my question to you is, what if it works? What would happen if it works?
Or how do you make it work? Maybe initial idea didn't work, and maybe you're just off a teeny bit on your plan and it needs some adjustment. But if you just bail out, then...
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is they bail at the first sign of adversity. As soon as it happens, they never stick it through. And I think that goes back to the plan A and plan B thing. But people they don't think that way. They don't think, what if it works? Like that, the initial thought when you first start a business or someone comes to you with an opportunity and says, hey, I have this opportunity for you. And the average person says, oh, that's a really good idea, but what if it doesn't work? That's always what you get from the average person. Well, what if it doesn't work? And I don't understand that, because for me, it's not that what if it doesn't work. It's, well, what if it does work? Because if it does work, this, that, and the other are going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm focused on. I'm not focused on if it's not going to work. You know?
You can't, because you're, and that's my dad. Dude, any idea I bring up to my dad, he goes, oh, what about this? What about that? And I'm just like, okay. But we'll leave with this, because I got to run. But I rode some shows, freestyle shows, back in the day, 2000, I think it was 5 or 6 or something like that, with Mike Metzger, the year that he did the backflip to backflip at Philly X Games. And I rode shows with him before. Now, for people that don't know freestyle motocross, people were flipping off of super kickers, which were super tall, super steep, and only set at about 40 feet, and you would do that in first gear. Nobody had done a long gap second gear flip. Metzger's like, I'm flipping a second gear gap. Okay, now, I said to him, this is the week leading up to it, and this was a really big learning lesson for me, because I was fairly young. I said, do you think you can do it? And he literally turned to me fast and goes, I know I can. And that right there in my head goes, click, okay. I got where you're at, where you need to be at to do this shit now.
Yes, you have full commit, both feet in.
Didn't even let me. That was the quickest thing he said all fucking night. Turned to me as soon as it come out of my mouth.
With his 1 point on his helmet with the eyeball.
Yeah.
I remember vividly watching him do that double flip on TV. Like, I loved that shit growing up.
I rode shows with him that week right before, like Wednesday before that. And he said that, and I was like, you think you can do it? I remember
watching it, standing up, like, look at this fucking maniac! Like, that was the coolest thing in the world. And then he did it on the snow after that in the winter, and I was like, this dude is fucking savage.
Yeah.
And you have to have a different mentality to do those things, and it's not the physical part of doing the flip, because he's probably done it 1,000 times in the phone. It's the mental aspect of just doing it.
Well, he had never even done it at a gap, like I was saying. Everybody had done it at short stuff. So that was the first one off of a regular long gap, off of a regular ramp, everything. Nobody even knew it. That's why everybody leaning up was like, we don't even know if you could do a second gear flip. And he's just like, I know I can. And I'm like, fuck, okay, let's get it.
Oh, if you're not doing flips, you're not in the game.
Yeah. Well, this was a time where basically Travis was hurt that day. So he didn't need to do it. He was already going to win. And then, but they even said to Travis in an interview, they were like, what would you have done if you were riding the contest? He goes, now listen, everybody says what they woulda or shoulda, but I'm pretty sure I'd have dropped right in behind him and done backflip no footer to backflip no footer. And I'm like, I fucking believe Travis, because he's a maniac.
Absolutely. Skydiving with no parachute, dude's crazy.
Yeah.
No, and it's 100% all mental, and I think that goes back to what we started the conversation with. When you do anything, you have to mentally prepare to do it, and if you don't have that mental game, whatever you're doing is going to fail. I can almost get, like, if I'm a betting man and you're not mentally prepared, I'm betting against you.
Absolutely. You have to want to do it and want to deal with the adversity or be able to, and you have to commit yourself to preparing mentally and everything else that you need to do. But a lot of mental people overlook that game, like you're saying, and it's much better to try and set yourself in a good mental space with positive vibes and imagine it going well and working out.
Literally, I get chills thinking about getting my hand up.
I gave myself them earlier, thinking about rolling away from a flip, just setting the wheels down and just being like stoked that you just pulled them.
Such a great feeling. I'm so glad you understand, because there's really not many people that understand that feeling. There's really not. It's tough to have conversations with people about these things, because I've been doing this stuff forever.
You know, that feeling that you get, the hair-raising feeling, I think is only that good because of the work. If it was easy, it wouldn't be like that. But it's the fact that you put in all that work leading up to, I put in all the work trying to figure out the flip, dealing with fear and dealing with my mental demons, and then building myself up to that point. And that's why it's such a huge feeling, because you're like, I fucking did it.
And tell me if I'm wrong. When you do comedy and you do a set at the dojo, and you get off that set and you just feel like you crushed it, you have a very similar feeling.
It's a similar buzz.
Yes. It's not the same because the adrenaline is not there.
Exactly. But there's a little adrenaline, but it's not like, holy shit. Yeah, a little bit.
You're not sending a 250-pound bike 80 feet in the air.
No, but again, listen, the consequences are, I feel bad about myself for a day.
You get made fun of.
Yeah.
You look like an idiot.
Yeah.
Who cares?
I'm fine with that.
I'd much rather that than go to the hospital with broken noses.
That's what I tell people. You think crashing in front of the fucking 4,000 people doesn't make you feel like shit as well? Like, that also sucks.
Oh, yeah. It's like, for me, I'd rather win the fight and get my ass kicked, like walk away, broken nose, destroyed, but I won the fight than losing the fight and get my ass kicked. Like,
yeah.
It's worth getting your ass kicked, get your hand raised. Like, you see some of these wars in the UFC, and you watch these guys, and they're just destroyed. And I resonate with that feeling when they get their hand raised. I'm like, man, like, they earned that win.
But honestly, if you got into the ring and, and it would go either way, but I'll put it this way. If you got into the ring and got choked out first 30 seconds, you would be disappointed, but you wouldn't be as disappointed as if it went the whole fight and then you got beat at the end. Just because of the amount of effort put in on that day. It still sucks, but it's not, you're just like, I just got outclassed or whatever. But if you put in a super hard fight and then you end up losing, then I feel like that feels worse.
I'll tell you right now, my last fight that I had was me and Nick were actually going to skateboard across the country to raise money for autism.
Awesome.
Which was we were going to do something wild. So I put my fighting career on hold when I got hurt. But before we did that, I had my last fight, and I put in a ton of work at the title fight, and I busted my ass for this fight. And I watching the video now, I outperformed the kid. There's no way this kid won, but somehow the judges saw it the other way, and I lost a split decision. And it was the most gut-wrenching loss I've ever gone through in any sport whatsoever because of the work that I put in, and I felt like I won that fight.
Exactly.
Like, I would have rather got knocked out and have him earn that win rather than it get taken away from me by the judges. And that's how I truly feel. And it may be, you may see that as an excuse. And I had opportunities to finish the fight myself. I dropped him in the first round with a right hook. I took his back and almost choked him out in the second round. But I still lost the fight. So it's gut-wrenching, but you got to get back on the horse. And I'll tell you right now, if someone told me, hey, James, you want to go into a fight right now, as much as I would want to, I wouldn't be mentally prepared to do it.
Dude, people had said that about flips. Would you flip? And I said, listen, I would love to flip. But, and this is exactly what I've told them, despite nothing to do with this conversation. I said I would love to flip, but I know the amount of preparation and fear that I would have to put into it to get to that point.
Yes. 100%. I would not be ready. If someone said, hey, James, your neck is healed. If you go fight right now, your neck is healed. I wouldn't be ready for it. I'd get my ass.
Hey, you have discs bulging in your neck?
Yeah, I got into a car accident. Someone rear-ended me going 40 miles an hour. Yeah.
Okay. There is a procedure. I had 2 bulging discs and 1 herniated in my neck. Bad enough where, now this is in 2006. Bad enough where from the top of my shoulder to the bottom, right underneath my elbow, would get like a super sharp, it didn't make sense, a sharp and numb pain at the same time.
Needles on steroids, right?
On both sides. To where
I get it, my elbow down to my fingers.
Okay, so this guy fucking went into they pulled my esophagus to the side, went in with a needle, had something come out of the end of the needle with emitted sound waves and shrunk the discs back down. I rode 2 fucking weeks later, and I've still not had a problem with it.
So I can't really, right now, because I was on my way to work, so I had workman's comp. I couldn't choose my doctors, unfortunately. It was bad. And I truly believe if I was able to choose my doctors and my physical therapists, like being in the fight world, I had access to some of the best physical therapists in the area.
But I guarantee you the doctors don't know about this fucking procedure. This is the only guy, this guy was front line of it, and nobody talks about it. My ex and I got in a car accident too, and the doctors are going, "You're too young to have surgery." And she's like 31. And I'm like, yo, they did my neck when I was 25. I'm like, it's for some reason, it works too well, bro. It works too well. They did this shit 15 fucking years ago, and I'm still fucking fine.
Because this happened when I was 28. I'm 32 now. Next week I'll be 32, and I'm in pain every day. And it's something that I've learned to live with at this point. I'm currently in a lawsuit because of it, so I can't really talk about it too much.
Well, I don't want to get into that, but I will direct you, point you in the direction of this doctor.
When I can, I definitely would love to go see him, because I don't want to I don't want to be in pain. I want to live my life. Like I said, I can't. I surfed, I skated, I wanted to get into dirt bikes my entire life, and now I can't do any of it. Like I can't do I can't even work out, man. Like I can't even lift weights.
I'd ride 5 or 10 minutes, and the fronts of my arms would hurt so fucking bad I couldn't hold my phone to my face. When I called my mom, she used to work for a neurosurgeon. When I called my mom, I was literally laying on the floor in Texas with my phone set on my face and talking to her. And I'm like, I can barely move my fucking arms. And she's like, that's coming from your neck. So luckily, my friend who I now work for at the shop, his neighbor down the shore is this doctor. He goes, he knows this thing. So that's how I got hooked up with him. So when you're ready, let me know. We'll point you in that direction.
100%.
All right.
I don't want to be in pain.
No, nobody should, and I honestly feel like they're suppressing this treatment because it works too well. There's no reason that I had this in 2005 and nobody fucking has any idea about it. And it worked, and I rode 2 weeks later, dude. It makes zero sense to me, which is why I'm doing this fucking podcast.
What everybody says to me, they're like, "Oh man, I wish I'd get into an accident. You're gonna get a nice payday." And I tell them, I'm like, listen, it happened in my dream car. I got a brand new BMW M3. It's a dream car for me. I would give back the M3. I would give back every penny that I'm going to get and some, and never have the car ever in my life and drive a hoopty for the rest of my life to not be in this pain, to not have to deal with this. And wouldn't even think twice about it, because I'd still be able to do the things that I love to do.
Exactly.
Like it changed my life completely, and people don't understand. They're like, "Oh, you're gonna get some money." I don't give a shit about the fucking money. I don't care. I want to be healthy.
Quality of life.
Yes. I don't think people understand that. They do, and it goes back to the mental aspect. They're like, "Oh, quick payday." I'm like, "No." I'm like, "No, that's not what it's about."
Because they're not struggling building their own shit. They're working some shitty job that they just got, and they're just like, "Oh, extra money that I didn't have to go to the shitty job for. Sweet."
Exactly. I don't want it. I don't want the payday. I'd rather not get it and be healthy. But it is what it is. I got to live life, and it goes back to the mental game. I had to compartmentalize and figure out how to live my life and still enjoy life.
Well, let me know when you're ready, son. We'll get you fixed up, and then you'll at least be able to wakeboard or whatever the fuck.
You just made my day.
Hey, where can everybody get you?
We the People Radio on Instagram with periods in between each word. So we period people, we period the period people period radio. On Instagram, on YouTube, We the People Radio. Find us over there. That's where we put all of our podcasts. Soon, hopefully next week, we'll be on Apple and Spotify. We're working on that as we speak. But yeah, come find us over there. Clint's going to come join us in the next couple of weeks as well.
Cool.
Absolutely.
There's news to me, but I'm down.
We're making it because Mike came on. Well, Mike came on pretty recently as well. So now we gotta come on and have you on. I want to discuss what you had in the Clint files about the food the other day. That was a great episode.
Perfect. All right. Thank you everybody for listening, and check us out at freethinker.tv.